When you look at AI,
Yeah.
there's a ton of content out there flooding the web. I mean, there's just millions of new blog posts every single day. So if you look at it from that perspective, how the hell is Google supposed to tell what's important and what's not? So doing things such as having little bios on your blogs, linking to your LinkedIn profile so they can see that you are experienced in this area, those sort of things are helping Google to understand who you are and why you should be talking about this.
Google's share of search dropped below 90% for the first time. So are people just going straight to ChatGPT with this? Like, how should brands start diversifying?
That's a really good question.
Welcome to Behind the Craft. Today I am with Heathen Steve. Stephen Heath is our head of SEO here at BrandCraft. And Stephen, why don't you just tell the world, this is your first time on the show, so tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into the world of SEO.
Yeah, so it goes back actually to the semi-early days, pre-2010. You know, people were still keyword stuffing. It was pretty interesting times where, you know, people were just going out on blog farms and just purchasing tons of links and spamming things, and it's really a lot of what was going on back then is a lot of what Google is still fighting today and how they keep improving their algorithm. And but my big part in it was really focused on the content side of things. So my wife and I actually owned a content development business, so we focused on everything from writing website copy to ongoing blogging, social media, and things like that. So that's really kind of where I, cut my teeth in this world, and over the years just learned more and more about it. Worked with some really smart people over the years who have, been in SEO since early 2000s, even well before me even. So have that privilege to learn from them, and that's kind of the background there. So. And ever since I've just been in digital marketing and more in general, with an emphasis in SEO.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I think let's just get to the basics and catch up. You said a lot of things right there that I hope everyone understands and knows, but if they don't have the history, hopefully our listeners all know what SEO is, but I don't think people know exactly what all goes into it. You kind of teased some of that before. So what all does optimizing for search engines actually entail? Like, what does that require?
Yeah, when you think about search engines, I think about it in two different ways. You have kind of two audiences in one way. So one, you're creating effectively road signs for robots. Mm-hmm. The next piece is really, creating a good experience for your actual readers, your actual audience. And obviously the robots, their goal is to serve up the best content for those humans. But in order to get in front of those people, you got to think about what Google wants. What are those bots seeing when they crawl the site? And so we want to make sure the site's technically sound. So that's it's really getting the site up to par where the speed is really quick. Your site map is very clear. Yeah. The Google can crawl it really easily. And so on the technical side, what we're looking for is to make sure that the site is running really well. So we all know what makes a good site. We want it to be fast. We want it to be easy to navigate. So there's a lot of things that go into the back end of the site that make it technically sound. On the more the front end side of things we spend a lot of time on are that are pretty surface level, but really, really important, making sure your URLs actually make sense. A lot of people don't put a lot of thought into what that URL extension is. They just say, marketing agency, something like that. But where is your marketing agency? You want to think about that sort of thing. Where are you operating? All those sort of things. So it's your URL, it's your page titles. So when you actually, do a search and you get that blue link, or you look up in a tab in your Safari, your Chrome, whatever you're using, and you see the name of that page that you're on, that's a big piece of what Google's looking at. And then all of your headers, your H1s, your H2s, H3s, and making sure that's a really clear and obvious to Google what the page is about. And then, of course, we have to zoom out and say, okay, what is the user getting out of this? And really, when it gets to that point, you're talking about what I think of as just user experience. What do you want to see when you get to your website? Put yourself in your users and your audience's shoes, and think through if you're actually serving them with the content they want and need when they do that search. Make sure that's actually relevant to the services that you provide or the products that you're selling, and make sure it's digestible. A lot of times we're looking at these big content blocks, and no one wants to read that. So put it in a term that people want to actually read it. So that's a big part of it. And then outside of that, you're looking at, one of the things that's been around for a long time that a lot of people try to discount, but it's backlinks. And as, I think we'll get into this later probably, it's my guess, but when you look at AI, there's a ton of content out there flooding the web. I mean, there's just millions of new blog posts every single day. So if you look at it from that perspective, how the hell is Google supposed to tell what's important and what's not? Well, they're doing the same way they've been doing it forever. They're looking at backlinks. Those are votes for that particular piece of content, and show that you are an authority in this particular subject. And so backlinks are still really important. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I think that's we're definitely going to get into that. I've been doing some research on this AI stuff on the side, just trying it, and I can't wait to pick your brain about those things. So, but before we do that, I want to get into some examples of a lot of these things we've talked about, because I'm sure we've done a lot of the stuff you've already mentioned for some clients. And I know that you gave me a list of clients that you think are really cool. I had some that I added here too. So, let me talk about the first example here is Seattle Blinds. Can you first, I guess, just tell everybody who Seattle Blinds is? It sounds kind of obvious. They have a great name. But tell everybody a little bit about who Seattle Blinds is and what it exactly is that we did for them.
Yeah, Seattle Blinds, it always is nice when you have one of these perfect domains, when they come in and they say exactly what they are and it's that exact match and it's their brand. That's obviously really, really great for an SEO. You kind of lick your chops a little bit when you come across those. So I will say that they gave us a good head start, but they've been working in Spokane for a long time. They actually started out in the painting industry and noticed, hey, there's a lot of people here with naked windows. We should probably solve that for them. And so they started a blinds company in Spokane. And then a couple years ago, they decided to go to a larger market and work into Seattle. And going into Seattle, that's obviously a much bigger challenge. You have a lot of national players that aren't necessarily as big in Spokane, as well as a lot of mom and pop shops, so to speak. And so it was definitely an uphill battle. That despite the domain, when we first launched, we did not get necessarily the traction that you might expect.
Yeah. So, what is it that we did? How did we help them out and improve?
Yeah. So when we first started working with them, they actually launched their own website on Webflow, but we helped them with the design a bit, but it was they wanted it to be very minimal. It's just focused on really kind of think about something in the fashion industry or just interior design. Or if you've ever been on that site called House, it's kind of like Pinterest, but just for home decor and things like that.
Okay.
Architecture, home and interior design. Really focus all over images, and that's nice once you get there. But at the same time, what am I supposed to do now that I'm here? And then again, being road signs to robots. How does Google actually know what you do and what you're providing for the audience when they get there? So. After a few months of struggling through, we were able to, talk to them and say, hey, we really need to update your site. And so we came back, updated their site with a lot more content. We evaluated what makes them a little bit different in the marketplace, and a lot of us being family owned. They really do operate as a bit more as almost an interior designer rather than just, while they are just doing your blinds and shades and things like that, they bring a little extra consulting to the table, not just, okay, here's your honeycomb blinds, good luck. So that's a piece of the puzzle for them in differentiating themselves in the marketplace. And we added a lot of pages to the site to give them more index pages, because obviously you have to have something that will rank in the page that's specifically relevant to these keywords they're trying to rank for. And it was pretty astounding when we first did that. We saw, actually pulled up some notes here. I mean, we saw lead volume jump from, I think in November, they had like 12 leads. In December, after we launched the new site, which is a very down month for blinds, you can imagine not a lot of people shopping for blinds.
Right.
They increased from 12 to 22 in a single month just after launching this site. And I don't think that's just a coincidence.
Right.
Given the time of year especially. And then over the same time period the following year, they had a 165% increase in leads. And their conversions went up by 300%, just because I think a lot of that is we were attracting the right traffic and we were telling the right story, making them look really good. So, and then on the SEO side, we look back to March of 2024 versus now. Let me see what I have here. We've gotten their organic traffic has tripled in that period of time. And their organic traffic value. So these are really high value keywords, have tripled, and the traffic's grown by 264%. And so what's really interesting about that, we see this a lot, is where traffic will grow, say 200 some odd percent, but then the traffic value goes up by 300 or more percent. And that's a really big thing when we talk about, how do you know what keyword to go after? One of the things I like to look at is the cost per click, because if you're looking at, say, if you're looking at Google Ads and you're going after, say, a $40 cost per click, that obviously is a highly valuable keyword that people are willing to pay a lot of money for. And so if we can get that organically, man, that's a huge win for the client. So that's one of the things we try to do, and that's where that traffic value comes in. And so we don't just look at how many keywords are you ranking for, how much traffic are you getting? Are you getting the right traffic? Are you getting valuable traffic? Are you getting traffic that's at the bottom of the funnel, ready to pull the trigger and buy or submit their information to be a lead?
Awesome. Cool. Let's jump into another example. I think that's I just want to kind of roll through if that's all right. So let's talk about Caprock. This one is really interesting to me because I think they have a very specific kind of niche audience, and we talk a lot about, I'll let you speak more to this. You have a lot more insight on that than I do, but I wonder, we have a lot of clients in the service-based industry that do have very specific niches that they kind of reach out to, and I've always wondered specifically with Caprock, how does we do that? So I guess I'll let you talk now. But you tell me who Caprock is, and yes, maybe speak a little bit to that audience.
Yeah, so Caprock is really, really interesting because, when you look into financial services anyway, it's already very competitive. You look in any, financial services across the board, you look at banks, you look at financial advisors, all those industries are highly competitive and obviously highly valuable. Every single lead you convert has a significant return on the investment in most cases. In Caprock's case, they actually target ultra high net worth. So we're talking, $10 million in net worth or higher. So getting in front of that audience is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in this industry. So we really started looking at a lot of different angles for them. So we do everything from programmatic to paid search, paid social on LinkedIn to get in front of business owners and CEOs and such. And of course, organic search comes into play there a lot too. And one of the really interesting things about them is they have a lot of different locations across the country. And so when we first started looking at this, we thought, okay, well, these are high net worth people. How many of them are going to be looking at just their specific location versus nationally? Because, hey, I want the best of the best. I have access to that. So I don't necessarily care where they are. Well, it turns out that they do care where they are, and they really are looking for, someone local to help them out, at least within their region. And so that might not be the be all end all of their decision, but it's definitely one of the things they value a lot. And it makes a lot of sense when you have a lot on the line. You've built up a lot of assets over the years. You're looking to pass this on to your family and build a legacy. You don't want to just hand off to anyone, and you want those eyeballs, right? You want to be able to look across the table and know you can trust that person. And so we've actually shifted a lot of our strategy organically to that local search. And so we've seen more and more of their search volume come in as we have begun focusing on on the Boise market, on the Austin market, on the Chicago market, so on and so forth, where they have offices and have advisors who are obviously working in those areas. And so beyond the organic piece of that, or the local piece of that, one of the things that really rings true, and this is an SEO lesson for everybody right now, is Google today is looking for, I think we touched on it earlier, but they're really looking for authority, right? And so they want to know that you are the best person to be talking about this. One of the ways they're doing that, besides obviously backlinks, is one of the things I referred to, but they are looking for brands. And when we think about brand, we think about, I'm looking for a tool. Well, I go Google, tools, Google for a saw or something, or lumber.
Right.
Lumber near me. What's going to come up? Obviously Home Depot or something like that, right? Well, we think about those types of searches, and that's a big complaint in the industry, is like, how do you possibly compete with these behemoths in the marketplace? How do I, as Caprock, compete with a Fidelity or a JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs? Well, one of the things that Google is looking for is actually that brand name search. And so this is where, when we look at marketing as a whole, and what we do at BrandCraft, is we are creating brand awareness. We're creating demand for that brand. And so as we put out ads through programmatically, and we're getting in front of people on various websites, on mobile apps, as we are positioning our advertising on LinkedIn, and we're gaining that awareness, what we've seen is our search volume for Caprock and other branded keywords have skyrocketed in comparison. So, if we look at, a period from this year versus last year in the same time period, we had under 2,000 searches for Caprock oriented searches. And this year, in the last 5 months, I think it is, we have over 3,000 searches for the brand name and different brand searches. And that has been obviously very instrumental to them gaining those searches, because that's pretty high intent. But beyond that, what I believe is happening is we're seeing the ripple effects of that across other lower and mid-funnel keyword searches, as people are just searching for wealth management firms near me and things like that. Because Google now knows that, hey, this is a trusted brand because people are searching.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. All around, I think we talked a lot about this client in general and reaching that audience, and we were saying the difficult thing about it is like, it's kind of, what is that? Celebrities, they're just like us. It's to some degree, they are going to be in a lot of the same places we are. So how do you make sure it's the right person seeing it? And this is where that data and sharing across from like what you're doing on programmatic and what you're doing on SEM, and how you can use those things to benefit each other. I think that's a really good example of that. Like this is one of those things that the information, because we're doing all of that for them and not just SEO, or not just, we're able to kind of break down and figure out why these things are working maybe better than if we were limited to only doing one service, for example.
Just SEO for them, I think that we'd really struggle, to be honest. Because there are some very, the keyword difficulty on this, which is basically how hard it is to rank for these keywords. Many of them are very, very high, but that's where we're being able to zoom in and get to long tail keywords, which are, wealth management for ultra high net worth individuals near me. Those types of keywords are great. And for smaller brands, that's something you definitely want to tap into. But the great thing you can do as a smaller brand is you can build on that, and we call it compounding SEO. So you start with these long tail and you get shorter and shorter and shorter, and eventually you can just rank for wealth manager in your area. But if you start trying to get these, super high difficulty keywords, it's going to be an uphill battle, and you're going to be waiting for a very long time to get any return on that investment.
Sweet. Yeah. All right. So I think this is my last example, and there's kind of a little segue there because we were just talking about us and all the different services we offer. We're doing SEO for us too at BrandCraft. So so I think hopefully people listening know who BrandCraft is. So maybe we don't have to give them that whole recap, but maybe you could just talk about what lessons can businesses learn from what we've done on our own past SEO mistakes.
Yeah, I think BrandCraft's definitely gone through an evolution as of recently. We had a site that was really about kind of everything that we do and we've provided. We've really simplified that down to really focusing on brand and design primarily. And as we did that, we took the site down to kind of just the nitty gritty of what we provide, and we've also in that process, de-emphasized our local search. And I think, if we could go backwards, I think we would maintain that local search piece of it, because that is really important to us. It's where we get a lot of our traffic. But what we are doing that is working and beginning to come to fruition is, again, when we come back to that topical authority, when we have a site that is about one thing versus all things, it's not about branding, it's not about web design, it's not about pay-per-click, it's not about social advertising, it's not about SEO, and we start pulling those things out or decreasing the emphasis on those things and elevating the emphasis on branding and design.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, what that allows us to do is to not water down the message. And again, when we get into where is SEO going, it is all about establishing authority in a specific area. And so, I'll go off on the rails for a second here, but we'll talk about HubSpot. Everybody knows the brand HubSpot. If you not, it's awesome CRM marketing automation tool. There's a big story that's going all over Twitter and LinkedIn a few weeks back, and it was about they lost like half their traffic. And Google has released algorithm update after algorithm update after algorithm update in the past 12 to 18 months especially. It's been through the roof. And part of that is about helpful content, and it's about spam content. And those are two things that sound very similar, a little bit different, but those are the primary updates that they're releasing. And where I bring up HubSpot because they've released a lot of content over the years that is very helpful to a lot of people. So if you want to know about marketing, if you want to know about starting your startup, launching your startup, going to market, all these things that HubSpot's written some really good articles about. But that's not really what they do.
Right.
And so Google has kind of said, okay, well, that's not what you do. While yes, that content is relevant to your audience, it's not really relevant to you directly. And so they've pulled back the rankings of a lot of the posts that they've released over the years that a lot of people have probably clicked on and downloaded. And so HubSpot's traffic went down dramatically. And you know what? That's okay with them. Same thing for us. We're looking at going, okay, we understand what we're about, we understand who we're trying to serve, and we understand what we're expert at. And so we're going to talk about these specific things as BrandCraft. And then what we are doing as a brand is we're rolling out these other services, SEO, paid advertising, into other brands. And that is a strategy that a lot of people ought to consider from, when we talk about SEO, we talk about authority, and really having a main topic of your site that's a good strategy a lot of people can consider and kind of follow suit with.
That's interesting. Yeah, we're kind of having to practice what we preach and learning how painful it is, I think, to some degree, that it's a slow game, that we're playing a slow, but worth it, because like you said, we are starting to see some results there. It's just we're having to take time, and that would happen. That happens with the rebrand, I think, to some degree, often. So, cool. So you just talked about a lot of the things that's changing with Google and their new algorithm, the changes they make. Let's talk about what's changing in the world of SEO. So what is EEAT framework? I have no idea what this is. This is some research up beforehand. Is it EAT? Do you say EAT or
You say
EEAT?
EAT, yeah. You can
Okay, EAT. All right.
T. So it was, EAT's been around for a long time. They added the extra E to it basically to combat AI is what it really comes down to. How well that's working, I'm not really so sure. But effectively, EAT has been expertise, authority, and trustworthiness.
I see.
And so that's really what they've always used to define what is helpful content, what type of content do we want to rank. The extra E they've added is experience. And so the easiest thing to talk about is, a good example I use a lot of times is a new iPhone's coming out. I can go out, I can do research on CNET and any other tech blogs I want to, TechCrunch, and they're going to have all kinds of articles about the iPhone 17, let's say. And I can learn all about it. I can regurgitate my own blog. I can get AI to regurgitate that blog and tell Aaron all about what the new iPhone is going to be about. Or I could go to a tech convention and I can pick up that iPhone. I can play with it. I can actually experience that. And so when I experience that, now all of a sudden putting that into first person and understanding or letting the audience understand that I have actually used this iPhone, that becomes more meaningful to them and becomes more meaningful to Google. So one of the things people can do when they are writing their blogs is actually tell those first party stories. Tell the stories of what they did for their clients. Tell the story of in a case study, user experience, and make sure it isn't just talking about it generically. So that's one thing you can do just in the phrasing of your blog post and your articles that you're releasing. Cool. So that's one piece. The other side of that is really looking at, we keep talking a lot about topical authority and going deep, and so we want to build topic clusters and talking about, here's our central piece or central topic that we're talking about. And what we see ranking a lot of times these days is really long articles. So we used to talk about, 500 to 1,000 is all people want to, 1,000 words is all people want to read. So give them what they want to read. Don't go too deep. Well, now it's getting more into, let's go really in depth. Let's break the article up into sections with a lot of good H2s, H3s. So you know what you're getting into, and you can follow along with that. And then we'll write smaller articles that break down and maybe go even more in depth on each of those H2s or H3s, the subheadings. And so now we're building this topic cluster and we're going in depth. And so those are a couple things that have, they're consistent with what Google's done over the years, but it's a bit different than the way we used to approach it. I can,
cool.
One other thing I'll talk about a lot is, what is AI doing about, how is AI impacting all that too? So, you can't do a search anymore hardly without seeing the AI overviews. And we all know, obviously ChatGPT's taken over some search. I don't know if you've heard, but, back in, I think it was December, ChatGPT launched their own search engine, which is integrated with Bing. So they're actually using Bing's algorithm with their own search. Their own search. Search engine. So ChatGPT's search engine is definitely is piggybacking off of Bing, but it is its own thing. But we have to ask the question now, okay, so what do we do? Who do we cater to? If Google is starting to lose search traffic, do we need to change what we're doing? And the answer really, at least as far as we can tell right now, no. Generally speaking, Bing and Google operate very similarly. And if you look at SearchGPT, what their search results are, a lot of the stuff that's ranking at the top of the rankings for Google are going to be there for search as well. The difference really comes in formatting. And so for the longest time, what SEOs preached is keep people on the site, keep them engaged. It's all about time on site.
Yeah.
Google has really flipped it around a bit, and they said, okay, what we understand is, everybody's looking at short form video. This is something you'll understand for sure. It's all about short form video. People's attention is so short now. So what they want are answers, not an education necessarily. If they want an education, they can go deeper. They can click around. They can do what they need to do. But what we want to do is structure the content and think about those AI overviews that you're constantly seeing. And at the beginning of your articles, make sure that you actually structure your article in a similar way. Give them bullet points. Say, if you have 30 seconds to read this, and you'll walk away knowing more than you did before. And it'll also capture the interest of that audience member. And you're also a lot more likely to show up in those AI overviews and be linked to. So, there's, unfortunately, that still means no click for you, very likely. But if they see the AI overview and say, okay, I need to go deeper on this, they're then going to possibly click on your answer. And that's really kind of the best we can hope for going forward. I mean, there's not much we can do about the no click any longer.
Yeah.
But that's a really important piece. And then, one other aspect I'll talk about when it comes to the authority and making sure you're getting ranked is going back to EAT. One thing I skipped over there is, who are you? And when we talk about authority, Google really wants to see what experience and what authority do you have. So doing things such as having little bios on your blogs, linking to your LinkedIn profile so they can see that you are experienced in this area, those sort of things are really helping people to, or helping Google to understand who you are and why you should be talking about this.
That's interesting. I hadn't even realized that's probably why so many people are doing it, but a lot of the blogs and things I've been reading lately are doing that. There's some, it's that this author is so it gives you like a whole, and I'm like, this is weird. This didn't used to be here. It used to just be able to get to the content. Now it makes sense. Speaking to that authority, that's a good tip. Okay, so I want to talk about Google and what they're doing, and then we're sort of already talked about this before, but Google's share of search dropped below 90% for the first time. So do you think it's in relation to what you're talking about? Is more of that going over to Bing, or is this even benefited? Are people just going straight to ChatGPT with this? Like, how should brands start diversifying now? Should we start looking at doing more outside of, like, I think a lot of focus has been put on Google. They kind of owned search forever. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So how should brands diversify their approach now with SEO?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot more. It really depends on what type of brand you are, right? If you're a local dentist, are people going to be going to search, ChatGPT and asking, find me a local dentist? Yeah, maybe, but probably not.
Right.
Generally speaking, people are still going. They're still going to click in the map pack. They're still going to click on the first, 2 or 3 results typically. So going to click on paid ads. Those things aren't going to go away. But it's going to be for more of those informational searches, the top of funnel, middle of funnel type searches where I need information about something. I'm trying to decide, going back to, Caprock as an example, right? I'm trying to decide what strategy I should take with my financial future, with building a legacy, and I'm doing high level research about these topics. Really good chance people are going to start using ChatGPT for that sort of thing. They might start searching in there using their search engine for that as well. So building, it doesn't change the strategy, but it from a search or from a content perspective necessarily, outside of some of the things we talked about as far as formatting and things like that. But what it does mean is that the importance of kind of being everywhere and building the brand, going back to earlier in the conversation, building a brand and being in front of people, so when they learn something, they say, okay, that's an interesting topic. Hopefully you wrote about that topic.
Yes.
Hopefully you're the person providing them the education and building trust with them. But if you're not, hopefully you've built enough of a brand where they say, I want to utilize this strategy, and I think this brand knows how to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because the ChatGPT answer or the AI answer isn't going to say you should go to Caprock, for example, but they are going to talk about the benefits of a multifamily office for those people who are searching for these pain points. So now they know they want a multifamily office, and at that point they go to Google, they go to Bing. 5% of people go to Bing, whatever, and they're going to go, and then that's where you want to have that content so it shares back to it. And yeah, it's great if you're feeding the AI and now also benefiting from what AI's fed them. But it does, this makes a lot of sense. I'm learning a lot. This is great. So what are the biggest mistakes in your mind that companies make when relying too much on AI for content?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies I think that I know there's, some agencies I'll see out on LinkedIn that, tout the fact that we won't use AI for content. And, we've had writers over the years. We do, I'll just say we do use AI for content. And we've had writers over the years. And I'll tell you this, we've gotten a lot more pushback from our clients on the human written content than we have the AI. And the reality is, when you think about where is the AI getting their information and where is the human getting their information, who can process more information faster, who can make sense of it and put it together faster and in a more comprehensive fashion. So, and the answer, unfortunately, is the AI. I would love to say, humans for the win, but it's just not the case anymore. And it's getting better and better. But, the mistake people make, obviously, one is just, I'll tell you a funny story about this. This is crazy. I was using Claude. So here's a little tip. Claude, if you want an AI writer that will actually really use your voice and learn what voice you want to speak in better, Claude is better than ChatGPT. So feed that voice into it, or if you have someone you admire and you want to write LinkedIn posts or something like that in a certain voice, feed that into Claude, and it does a great job. What it's not as good at is the research aspect. So I'm writing a blog actually for BrandCraft, and I'm focusing on home services specifically. And asked it to go out and pull some case studies in and some survey results on the importance of brand and brand differentiation when you're looking to hire a home services company. And man, Claude came back with some really good information, and it had some very specific statistics. And I said, hey, these are great. Can you please give me the link where you found these particular case studies? And it comes back and it tells me, to be completely transparent, I made these up. No lie. It completely bold-faced lied to me. If an AI can bold-faced lie, it was hilarious. So I then went out and I used a different tool called Deep Research by ChatGPT.
Yes.
Deep Research is incredible, and it took overnight to do this, because I started toward the end of the day. I came back the next day and it pulled in some really good studies from Home Advisor and some trade groups and things like that, where they had gone out and done this research to support their members. And I was able to cite those things in the article and learn from it, so where we can actually help our clients. So I think when going back to your question, I got a little derailed there. But what mistakes are people making? It's obviously trusting the AI too much.
Yes.
B, not using the right tools for the right part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, going back to the voice piece is not training the AI to understand, what is your voice? How do you want to speak? How do you want to sound? Not training the AI, who is your audience and what are their concerns and things like that. And then finally,
Right.
just editing, making sure that you're editing the article and understanding what Google wants to see when it comes to those articles. So I have some prompts that I use regularly to make sure that the article is even structured in the way that we're talking about, so that we stand a better chance of getting in those AI overviews and things like that, so that we do comply with the EEAT standards and things like that.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I think the thing I hadn't even considered that. I mean, I obviously know, I don't consider it a lie necessarily, but I do know it makes things up. It has hallucinations. It has all that. So I just think, the thing I always find is when people over rely on it. But I think an interesting thing that we've talked about already here is the importance of not over relying too much is that you got to still be feeding it to some degree to have that authority you talk about. So if you're also relying on it to the point to where you're just taking what it says and you're not giving it your own unique perspective from your brand's perspective and what your brand's expertise is, then you're losing out, because now you're losing out on that differentiation, which is really the importance of a brand. I mean, that's really what you should be doing, is saying this is why I'm different than my competitors. So, all right. So let's get into some other suites of services. How do SEO and page search, for example, complement each other, and when should businesses invest in both?
That's a really good question. I literally talked to a guy last Friday about this exact question. I have a pretty small budget. And they've been investing in more traditional and print media for decades at this point. They've been around the Treasure Valley for a long time, and they have newcomers coming into the Boise area, and they are doing digital. And meanwhile, this older company is just getting their lunch eaten. It's really rough, and so they're looking at the reality is, hey, we need to step up our digital game. So we can compete and attract more business. And, when it comes to that question, I have to ask, number one, what is your budget? Number two, how bad do you need the business? Long term, more people click on the organic links than they do on the paid ads. Most studies show that paid ads get clicked on 10 to 20% of the time, I believe is the number, somewhere in there. And the rest of the time, people are focused on the organic links, because a lot of people, especially millennials and down, understand the difference between the paid and the organic. And they're going to go that direction because they believe that the organic is more trusted. Yep. So that's one thing. So when I do this when I look at this balancing act, if you have a smaller budget and you need business now, then absolutely go after paid first. Get the business in, start getting that return on your ad spend, then come back and invest in SEO. And the really cool thing about that is that paid ads is an accelerated testing field for SEO, because not only do we know obviously what search terms people are what search terms people are using, but also which ones are actually converting at the highest rate. The other thing is, and this is a fun thing and most people won't know about, is that Google had a really pretty cool leak back mid last year. I think it was in August or September. And there was this leak that came out about how Google operates on the search side. And let me ask you this. Do you know, does Google use paid search to inform their organic search results?
I mean, I would have probably assumed yes, but I would hope no.
You're right where Google wants you. Okay. Google will tell you that we do not. These two departments don't interact. They don't interact. Yeah. But in this leak, what came out is, no, it's not a pay per play. You're not, if you do Google ads, you're not going to have a better ranking just because you're paying. But what it does is it accelerates their learning because they are collecting click data inside of Google Chrome. And that's something they never revealed to anyone until this leak came out. And so, as SEOs and as digital marketers, we're always going, man, it just really seems like when my clients started doing paid ads, all of a sudden their SEO got better. This is so weird because Google swears that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And in reality, Google has been lying through their teeth for years. And so,
Perfect.
and honestly, it makes a lot of sense. If you can test that if BrandCraft is fulfilling the need for their customers, and they can test that inside of paid, why wouldn't they let that impact their organic? It makes sense. But again, it's something they told us they weren't doing. So all that to say, they should absolutely play together. There's a lot of reasons, both from a learning perspective, from a marketing and the client's perspective, is great. But it also does have a direct impact just because they are collecting that click data, and it is impacting search from that perspective as well. And then the next piece of that is, again, brand building and awareness. We talked about this earlier on, but getting people to search your brand is a really important piece of the puzzle going forward in 2025 and beyond. And so as soon as you have the budget to do so, invest in brand building, because it really does make a big difference.
Cool. So is there still a place for long tail keywords, or is Google's AI now getting too smart for that kind of thing?
I think, long tail keywords are definitely where it's at. I mean, it is much harder to definitively figure out which ones are actually going to move the needle for you, because the search volume is, especially when you start getting, hey, we have this long tail keyword, but I need it only in Spokane, Washington. It gets really difficult to tell, am I going to get any clicks off of that? But if we can start getting ranking for those long tail keywords in our specific area, obviously talking about more local and regional companies here, but if we can start getting keywords or search volume for that, and really good rankings for that, then we know that we can use that as a platform to continue to build and get higher up on those broader keywords as well.
So what's the best way to identify the high intent keywords, the ones that actually convert? I feel like this is a question that's like, it depends. But what would you say is the best way to figure that out?
I think I guess we can kind of refer back to that paid search versus SEO again. Is the high intent keywords are the ones that are getting conversions, but we can also use Google's data and look at the cost per click estimates. And when we see high average cost per clicks, we know that people are competing for those, and those are the ones that are probably going to be most likely to convert. Whereas the long tail keywords usually are really cheap because there's not a lot of search volume. And a lot of times they are higher up in the funnel. But nonetheless, we want to go after those, but ultimately we're trying to get to those, double-digit dollar cost per clicks if we can. And that's where we can really build our traffic value up organically. So we might be able to get $4,000, $10,000, $20,000 worth of traffic coming our way every single month without paying a dime for it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So how do you balance then? Let's see, how do you focus on ranking for broad, high volume keywords versus these long tail keywords? How do you balance that, and what's the best approach?
Yeah, so I think we gotta kind of look, okay, where are we trying to go? And we need to understand, okay, in 6 months, and more like 12 or 24 months usually when it comes to SEO, because it is a long-term play. But we need to know where we're going. What keywords are we ultimately trying to win? If there's a $40 cost per click keyword that we know converts at 30, 40, 50%, then we want to get there. But we also have to understand where we are, and we don't want to go and punch above our weight class, right? So if we are a brand that's barely entered the scene, And we actually have tools that tell us what our domain authority is. And so they basically do their very best to calculate how authoritative we are in Google's eyes. And if we are have a 3 domain rating, meaning we're not very authoritative, and we're trying to win keyword difficulties of 50, 60, 90, that's going to be an uphill battle, my man. So, what you got to do is really try to get those that are the easy level. And we're trying to get, 5, 10, 15 keyword difficulty keywords to start. And, but you also have to understand the business. And I think that's really, if I had to say kind of what is my edge in this industry, is because I've been in agencies for a long time and I've studied so many different industries at this point.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to pick up what certain industries are about, what a certain company is about, what their audience needs, and able to interpret intent pretty quickly. And when we can do that, we all of a sudden start going, okay, these keywords mean something and these keywords don't mean anything. And then we start weighing them from there. But does that make sense? I mean, is that
No, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I think that was great. That was awesome. Yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense. I learned a lot. This was, I think, I should have brought a notepad. Good thing I'm recording this.
Do we have the transcript?
I can go back and, yeah, exactly. I'll get the transcript, and I'm going to go through a lot of these things. I think this is, it's been really, really informative for me, so hopefully it will be for all of our listeners too. Is there anything else we haven't talked about that maybe you want to let people know about SEO, the world of SEO?
Well, I think one thing that, just in the conversation I left out, we talked early on about the UX side of it, right? And we used the example of Seattle Blinds and the changes that got made there. But when we talk about user experience, that is page load time, but that is really understanding how people use your site. And so I would encourage, we do this for some of our clients. I would encourage everybody to go out there and put Hotjar on your site or Lucky Orange or any of these user behavior analysis tools that are out there, and spend a few minutes looking at what people are doing on your site. And if they aren't getting the content that you believe is really important for conversion, then fix it. If they are getting to your site and they're bouncing, figure out why. Start making some hypothesis and go through there and do that, because that conversion data matters for both for you getting leads and for your SEO, because when you get conversions, you're going to get more traffic from organic. When you get conversions, if you're doing paid advertising, you're teaching the algorithms in Facebook, you're teaching algorithms in Google who converts on your site. And so those are really important feature or aspects of any type of advertising, any type of search advertising, is making sure people are converting on your site and that you're telling a good story. You're giving them a reason to hire you over someone else. And that's really, I think when it boils down, brand still matters. A clear message still matters, because I can attract people from all around the world to my little website because I did a good job organically ranking for some long tail keyword, and they get there and they go, why did Google send me here? What do I do next? And so until you can answer those questions within 3 to 7 seconds on your website, good luck.
That's so interesting. I think it's one of those things where it's like the old ways, no matter how much things change, they still, some of these things still stay. I mean, we had you did focus groups, and you did, did the glass wall, and you're watching people. This is just like the digital version of that, these tools you're talking about. And it's the same thing I do with video. Whenever I just go I don't know, something feels off. Where's this video dragging? You don't quite know. Just sit in a room and watch someone else watch your video. Oh my God, the things you'll cut. You know what I mean? I just learned this from the video production side. I'm like, okay, that scene's got to go. This scene's got to be shortened up, because I can tell I'm losing them. Websites, people say the same thing. Say, just let someone navigate your site. And when you see that they're not navigating the way you want them to, okay, you've got to switch that up and get that UX right. So,
Often it comes down to putting fewer words on your site.
Yeah.
That I think
Yeah.
if I could boil it down to one thing, more often than not, it's just too many words. Find a better way to say it and a little bit faster.
Yeah. I like hearing that from an SEO person. That's good.
Yeah, I was actually thinking how hypocritical that might be, but no, I mean it's true though. It's true. I mean, none of this matters if you don't get the conversions at the end of the day. So, I think that could be a whole nother podcast, is balancing brand and SEO. And I have these debates with our designers.
Yeah.
We have this really fancy tagline, and that's the H1, but the H1 tagline says nothing about what they actually do. It's just catchy.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Unless they're, some big brand out there that everybody already knows, and they're getting a ton of traffic from other sources, sometimes you gotta, meet in the middle and find some way to, get that H1 to line up, because otherwise that's a major piece of your homepage that is missing the mark when it comes to organic search.
Sweet. Well, it's been a good long conversation. I've learned a ton, like I said, so I'll be going back through this again very shortly. But thank you very much for coming on, Stephen. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been fun. Great talking with you.
Cool. Sweet. Let's do it again sometime.
All right. Good luck chopping that up.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. See you, man.